Welcome to Who Cares? I'm Taylor. I'm your host, and it's been quite a week. This was the third episode that I've done this week. That's not really going to mean anything to you because these are all coming out way after the fact and blah, blah, blah. But it's been a busy week for me recording-wise. 3 episodes in 1 week is the most that I've done so far, and it's been really great. It's felt very productive. I'm really excited because pretty soon I'll be getting this out in the world and releasing all this. And you'll be hearing this far after that's happened because this is going to be episode 7 or 8 or something like that. But, just taking a little, time capsule moment for me here that, at the time of recording, none of this has come out yet. But the time is coming soon, and it's getting exciting, and it's getting a little nerve-wracking. But we're doing the damn thing. You know what I mean? So I just interviewed my good buddy Mitchell Cohen, who is somebody that I worked with at a company called AppSumo. He's just like a really, really interesting dude, and somebody that I've taken a lot of inspiration from in my life. He's a creative strategist at AppSumo and does a lot of really successful videos on YouTube where he interviews tech CEOs and founders and just kind of gets learnings from them on what worked and what didn't in the entrepreneurial space. But he also has his own podcast called the Mitchell Cohen Podcast. He has a blog and a newsletter, and he is one of the most disciplined people I know when it comes to analyzing and tracking his progress towards his goals. And he has yearly goals and monthly goals, and he has daily check-ins, and he is very big in testing things in his life and seeing what the results are, which sounds a little exhausting. And we talk about that, like what is the balance of like trying to always be better versus just being who you are, which I think is a really important balance to strike. But he also takes everything that he does and everything that he learns about himself through this, and he shares it with others as a way to try to help you kind of cut through the noise or figure out what may or may not work for you in your life. So I really like that about him, and it's, very similar to what I'm trying to do here. Like, I'm not trying to do this podcast just because I want to have a podcast. I'm trying to do this podcast because I'm hoping that whoever's listening to these episodes gets something out of it, that they're learning something about themselves through the conversations that I'm having about my experiences or the guests' experiences. Yeah, so we're aligned in that way. And then we both have lived abroad and been expats, and we talk about that. We talk about getting unstuck. We talk about overcoming fear and what courage really looks like. We talk a little bit about sobriety and not drinking alcohol, how friends shape us. It was a really, really good conversation. I'm very grateful to have had him on the show, and I think you're gonna take something away from it. At least that's my hope. So let's dive right into it. Here is my episode with my good friend Mitchell Cohen. Mitchell, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you, man. It's good to be here. This place is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. I can't take much credit for it, but it works amazingly well. I'm really, really grateful to have access to this space, and my good buddy Carl Thiel owns it and lets me do my thing here, which is pretty rad.
Shout out to Carl and shout out to you, man. You're doing the thing. This is cool.
We're doing it. It's still not like live in the world yet. By the time this episode comes out, it definitely will be. But yeah, so many different things that I never thought about in starting a podcast. It's like, oh, you just record the podcast and then you put it out. And it's like, oh man, there's so many more steps to it. And so it's been a little overwhelming, but also a well-needed project for me to work on, to really just like dive into and like figure out all the problems. And
I'm excited not only for this, but really for you, because you're a curious dude and you have a lot of like world experiences. And so this is just one of the means where you could explore that curiosity and connect with like, you also know a bunch of dope people. So
yeah, no, I think the more that I thought about it over the last few years, because this idea has been cooking for a long time, but the imposter syndrome, kind of like, well, who the hell am I? Like, who the hell would want to listen to me? What do I have to offer?
Yeah. And at least for me, it's like that voice in your head where it's like, oh yeah, this imposter syndrome. Oh yeah, this is coming up. And I used to get like really surprised or almost like taken back by that voice. And then I think like a big lesson for me is like just almost treating it as like a game or this playful thing. Like, oh, yep, here it is. Here's that voice again.
Yeah.
How am I going to dance with it?
Yeah.
So that's cool that you're doing it.
I like the idea of dancing with it. Yeah, I think a lot of people, myself included, tend to shy away from it or recoil a bit. And one of the most rewarding things that I've found in life is the confrontation of fear, the acceptance of fear, the practice of not pushing fear away, but like leaning into it and exploring it instead of like, recoiling from it. Mm-hmm. And so I've never talked about it as a dancing with fear, but that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's one of those things. It's for me, I've found there's actually this book, it randomly came up. I think it is called, it's basically about acceptance commitment therapy. And I'd heard these words, but it kept on coming up. And the way that he presents it in the book is almost like it's not giving it the power. Like the power is like, oh, there's this big old thing and I don't want to do it. It's like, who am I to put a podcast out or whatever, versus the playful, adding a little bit of like fun or playfulness of like, oh yeah, here's that voice. Like, of course it's going to come up because it's natural. And for me, the changing that expectation to being surprised about that to like, oh yeah, this comes up. This is just part of the process.
Yeah. It's 100% a part of the process. I love, there's a quote, and I've mentioned it before on other episodes of this, like, everything that you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear, you know? And it's like, fear is the indicator that you're on the right path, you know? Like, if you're in a situation where you're not afraid, it's almost like you've dimmed your light too much. You've gotten too comfortable, and you're not moving in a direction of growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my fears come from, if we're sharing fears on the show, this perpetual thought of not being good enough. And over the years, I think a lot of this stuff can be traced to childhood, right? For me, it's getting cut from the basketball team or being shorter than average and having this realization that me by default is average or less than average, and then playing around with, but if I work really hard, I could get above average results. And then getting into that routine of, okay, I just have to work, and then get above average results without taking the second to say, wait a minute, how do I actually feel about this? And what do I actually want?
Yeah.
And that's been the biggest lesson for me over this past 6 months, really, / several years, but really this last 6 months. And if it's a new project, of recognizing that fear that comes up, and then also thinking through, like, what do I actually want? Because there's the spotlight effect, right? Where everybody thinks that everyone's looking at them, but in reality, everyone just cares about themselves. It's like, you announce this tomorrow on all the social media platforms, and everyone's like, yeah, cool. Like, they're not really being like thinking too much about what does Taylor think he's doing and all these things. And same thing, I have to remind myself that of what do I actually want? And, you know, I started writing on the internet at like probably 5 or 7 years ago. And I was weighing the same things of what will people think versus, oh, I actually just like this. So I'm going to prioritize more. So what will I think? And doing those things that almost are things I can't help but not to do. in letting that be the guide. So it sounds like similar thing for you.
Yeah, no, I like the idea of that, of like, you have to get down to what you really want, not what this imaginary audience wants, and in a sense, that's why I named the podcast Who Cares, right? It's like this, it has multiple meanings for me, but like over and over again, that idea or that thought that like everybody would think it was stupid or that I was foolish for starting a podcast or whatever. And then it was just like, but who cares? Who cares if they think that? Like, if it's something that I want to do and it's something that I am passionate about, then I have to do it. I have to see it through. Even if it fails, even if it's not successful and I only get 2 listeners per episode and like I just keep putting them out and it's like, yeah, this isn't happening. There's no traction happening. Do I want to continue doing it for the sake of doing it? Or do I want to say, all right, I tried and took a shot and I don't have to think about like, whoa, what would happen if I tried to do a podcast, So it's like, you have to explore that thing that what do you want regardless of what other people's opinions are,
Yeah. And it's not for everyone. In some of the best creations or pieces of art or companies, it's like for very few people, especially at first. And could just be for you and what you're interested in. If you try to make it for everyone, it's like probably nobody will be really, really interested.
Yeah.
But if you make it for you, then you'll probably get a lot of people who are interested.
Yeah. And I'm trying to really lean into that. Yeah, let's talk a little bit. So you have your own podcast, the Mitchell Cohen podcast.
I do.
And yeah, I'm interested what your experience has been with that and what that journey has looked like. Because you obviously had to face these same questions and indecisions and insecurities at the beginning.
Totally. And for background, I would identify as a perpetual overthinker for many years of, okay, I can't tell you how many different variations of like show names. It's like, what if it was this? What if it was this? What if I was like, I went to this, actually interesting enough, probably when I first moved to Austin, grew up in Indiana, lived in Chicago for a little bit, quit my job there, took a mini sabbatical, moved to Austin 2018, and was just trying to figure out whatever it was that I wanted to do next. I went to this podcast event, I guess. I didn't have one yet, but I just thought that they were cool. And for me, one of the first steps always is to figure out what it is that I want and to figure out a level of conviction and self-belief. It's just seeing other people do it. Mm-hmm. So I saw all these other people that had their own podcasts. Obviously, I've listened to tons of podcasts. Have been hugely influential in my life. And actually somebody just DM'd me the other day that I met at that from like 7 years ago. It was like, hey, he basically said he was talking to the CMO at this large company, and the CMO was asking him who does content really well. And he's like, you were the first one I thought of for video content. Can I make an intro to you? I was like, yeah, like, of course, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Thanks for thinking of me. And I was having this realization. I was like, maybe that wasn't the very, very lead domino, but all the best things in my life have been on the other side of me having some sort of curiosity or intuition and following that. And that doesn't mean that it was always easy or make a ton of sense at the time, but it's like the Steve Jobs thing. It's like you can't connect the dots looking forward, only backwards. And the big sort of the underwhelming part about that quote is like, oh, okay, well, I have no agency. I can only connect the dots looking backwards. But that's not the takeaway. The takeaway is like, go get some dots to connect. And so for me, it was randomly going to this podcast event. I forget even what it was called, but I remember I'd take a lot of notes in Evernote in so many different variations of what if it was this? What if it was this? What if it was like just some of the random ideas were like, what if it was the Cohen podcast? And my last name's Cohen. I just interview people in the world with the last name of Cohen. I was like, I still think that's just kind of fun or something. Yeah. Or what if it's about creativity? What if it's about business, blah, blah, blah. And then I realized none of that matters. And it could be about all those things, but just tying it to my name like kept all those doors open.
Yeah.
And so that's what I did. Similar thing for when I started blogging online. I liked the over optimizing thing, again, comes from early in childhood, like not being good enough, maybe not being, by default, not being, good enough. So I have to over optimize. And then realizing later on in life, it's like, who cares? And just having a massive bias towards action usually will solve those problems. And I was looking for the perfect domain. My name's Mitchell Cohen. And so I was like ready to blog online, go to buy the domain, mitchellcohen.com. It's taken. I was like, oh man, I can't start now. Like I got to wait for it. And I was like, wait a minute. That's so silly. That doesn't matter. The domain doesn't really matter. So my middle name's Landon. So I just grabbed mitchelllandon.com and then just started writing. And, for years, nobody was reading anything. But then I was just looking at the Google Analytics, probably the beginning of this year. I don't write on there a ton. I more so write on my newsletter, which is a separate thing. And it's like gotten a lot of SEO, like a pretty significant amount for having a tiny, tiny audience. And my takeaway is like, I kind of like this mantra, now, not how, where I want to figure out, how do I do this? And I got to take a course first, or it's got to be perfect. And then I sort of nudge myself through something I've learned through working with Noah and Noah Kagan, who runs AppSumo. And one of the things that I was journaling one day and was thinking like, man, this guy moves so quickly. He like acts first and then like think about it afterwards. I want to think about it first and act after. And I was like, okay, my way is kind of dumb. I'm going to start doing his way.
Yeah, you can get really stuck in the over analysis of what you should. And I suffer from that in a great way as well. Like just obsessing over all of the details and all of the things. And it's like, yeah, I think I've learned from a handful of people, and I definitely would credit Noah and some of the lessons that I learned from him when working at his company of just like, just do it. Just put something out there. Even if it's dog shit, just like put it out there and then improve it.
Right.
You've taken the step of putting it out there. And so that's literally what I'm doing. Like multiple people that I know have been like, you can record these podcast episodes. You don't have to put them out. And I'm like, but I'm gonna, even if I don't think that they're good, I'm editing them by myself. Like there's weird choppy edits in the video. I'm just like, whoever's watching this on YouTube, if they're like, that was a weird edit, I don't care. Like I'm not going to pay somebody $400 to edit it for me and make it look cool because I don't have that, budget, so I'm just going to put it out there. And if people like stick with me, they're going to see that it's going to get better over time,
Right.
And like, so just start it. You have to start. That now, not how thing is like so important for anybody that is trying to figure out how to start their next thing. Like the first step is just like, it's the most important one. You can't be thinking about step 236 and what that's going to look like and how are you going to manage your schedule and balance your priorities when you're at 236 and it's like you haven't even done one yet.
Yeah, and it's easy, I think, to look at this comparison of other people and then get the wrong takeaway of, this person is, this is what they do on Twitter of like these short, pithy sort of things, or take any of your favorite podcasts host. It's like how they started is very different from how they are right now. And that's why I go back to just like following that gut instinct and intuition. I was just like journaling about that one day to myself, and I wrote a little Twitter thread on it. It went like semi-viral, and then that concept of now not how ended up going in Noah's book, and it's chapter 1 is called Now Not How. And I couldn't have been like, I'm going to contribute a portion of the book that's like the overthinking sort of thing. And so my takeaway has always just been, and I've packaged some other things, and now looking back, I'm like, I've grown to be somewhat decent at taking an idea, compressing it, and packaging it in a way that resonates with people, whether that's through YouTube videos or through writing. And it's not like I set out to sort of do that. It was more of just like, I needed to do that for myself because that's how I learn. And that, following that and solving my own problems, or who, for anybody out there watching or listening to this, it's like, what is the problem that you have right now? And then just fix that. Because if nothing else, it's like you solved your own problem. And chances are there's other people out there that would resonate with that too.
Yeah, no, 100%. No, you're somebody that has inspired me greatly along this journey. And I don't think you know that. I'm like, because we haven't really talked much in a while. But you do. You have a newsletter. You are putting out things consistently on LinkedIn. You have your own podcast. You have a video series on AppSumo where you're interviewing tech founders. Like, you're very much putting yourself out there and saying, I have opinions. I have things that I think are valuable. I want to share them with others. And it's inspired me to like come out from behind the curtain of what I've been doing for the last 10 or 15 years, which is working really hard to help other people get their visions out and their messages out and their music out. And yeah, there was just always been this part of me that's like, but I have something to say too, and when am I going to say something, So I wanted you to know that you were one of the people that inspired me to really like start going down this path, because I think it's incredibly difficult and it's incredibly brave work to put yourself out there. And I like what you're doing. You're a very thoughtful person. And I want to talk a little bit more about this as we get into it. Like, I think you're one of the most analytical people that I know, as far as like analyzing all of the metrics of their life, from fitness to sleep to work to it's almost overwhelming to me how much you process that information. But what I love about you is that in those learnings, you're always trying to share it with other people, to like try to help them go, hey, I figured this thing out. Hey, I did the work and here's the research, and like, try this, And so it's one of the main reasons I wanted to talk to you, because, you, at the core of what you are doing, I feel like you're trying to help other people figure something out. Totally.
And thank you for my new favorite podcast. Just talking about me. No, thank you. That honestly means a lot. And all of whenever we have had conversations, that's what I was saying earlier. Is like, it's such a no-brainer for you to have this, because all of our conversations are so interesting and unique, and your perspective. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm excited for you.
Awesome. Thanks, man. So with that being said, I do want to talk about something that you wrote about on your blog, which is 20 seconds of courage. So what does that little window matter so much when it comes to facing fear? And how can people start noticing and acting on those moments instead of freezing up?
Yeah, so I think the cool thing about having a podcast or a blog or any sort of creative sandbox, for me, it's like answering, where does this go? I get inspired by something, or I want to experiment with something. And so what you're talking about earlier is, it helps for me to actually try to do the thing, experiment with it, and then think through, okay, like, let's analyze this real quick. How can I learn? And then put it in a way that other people can learn too. And it also gives me this place to follow my curiosity and excitement. And I saw this clip from the movie We Bought a Zoo. I haven't even seen the movie, but it's this like Matt Damon movie. Yeah. And there's this such a powerful clip where he is in the restaurant, this like cafe, and he's talking to his kids about the moment that he met their mother. And like the scene is beautiful. He's explaining it, and then they show the woman outside the cafe. He was like, we're in this exact cafe. I see this woman. She's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. But I was like, wait a minute, who am I? I can't go talk to her. Like, that's terrifying. And then he realized all he needed to do was have these 20 seconds of insane courage. And so he musters it up, goes up to her, talks to her, and he's like, that's how I met your mom. And to me, it's such a beautiful lesson in, oh yeah, all these things sound maybe really hard. Who am I? It's the imposter syndrome that we talked about. But when you break it down, it's barely even 20 seconds. And I've found that there are these areas of life where there's asymmetry, or there's a disproportionate amount of upside and very, very limited downside. Podcasting is one of them. Putting things on social media is another one. Following my gut and like just talking to random people, asking a girl out, like Matt Damon was talking about, that the tremendous upside, very low limited downside. And
yeah, like a brief moment of embarrassment or a feeling of rejection if they're like, no thanks, and then it's like, or months or years of love and happiness. Like the flip side is like, yeah, the reward is huge.
Yeah. And the other thing that I think that actually the biggest thing that it, from my experience of playing around with this, of what is the opposite of what we're talking about here? It's having this idea, wanting to do something, but then not doing it. And it's kind of the idea of snoozing the alarm in the morning of, oh, I'm going to get up. Oh, I'm not. Or, oh, I really want to start this podcast, but not right now. I'm too busy. I have this job. And it's like, oh, I really don't like this job. I would like to start acting. I'll do improv lessons later. And then all of a sudden you have this body of evidence that doesn't support the type of person you want to be. And I think that is the hard way to find the things that really light you up. And one of my biggest like life hypotheses is I'm going to put in a volume of work. And for me, like doing the thing and having something that I'm proud of is really, really important to me. Going back to, the childhood trauma thing of proving that really for myself. And that's where I've changed the dial of, first I was doing it for the perception of others. Over the last several years, I'm doing it for the perception of me, for me to be proud of me. And what I found is it could be traced back to these little micro moments, these 20 seconds of courage, or you starting the podcast or starting to write on a line. It's like, they don't have to work out. And in fact, if they all work out, that probably means you're not going for them enough. And so the idea for me of this 20 seconds of courage, it goes back sometimes to even asking a question. And when I was in university, I don't know why I call it. I listen to so many I think British podcasters when they call it university. I think it sounds cooler. So when I was in college, and I remember I would never big lecture halls. I studied finance, and there's 200 to 300 people in the lecture hall. I would never ask a question and raise my hand because it's like, oh, I don't want to. I could just look that up. I don't want to look stupid. And in reality, if I had a question, other people were going to ask too. I wasn't going to look stupid. I would have probably helped other people too. And if nothing else, I would have helped me. And so now, almost as a rule, if I have a question or if I don't understand something, I'll be like, wait, hold on, what are you talking about with this? And that's like a 2-second moment of courage, right? And so whether it's 20 seconds, 2 seconds, it's like following that instinct. And yeah, maybe 1 out of 100, you're like, oh shoot, yeah, that was obvious. Never mind. It's like, who cares?
Yeah, who cares? No, I love that. I mean, one of the, again, what I was talking about earlier about how you like to use your experience to try to help others, and you put a lot of effort into doing that. The act of being brave and courageous in so many areas of your life is the thing that inspires other people to do the same, and so, yeah. I do. I like raising your hand in class or speaking up at an all hands meeting or, whatever. In some small way, it makes somebody else go, oh, I should have. I had that. I had that same question. I should have raised my hand and asked that question. And putting things out in the world that then inspire other people to put things out in the world. It just creates this domino effect of good things. And I'm so drawn to that right now. That idea of just I'm hoping that starting this podcast inspires somebody to start something that they're afraid of, because I'm talking about the fear of it on almost all of these episodes. And I want people to know that, like, you don't have to be ready. You don't have to be ready or courageous or confident to start something. You can be scared and shaky and unsure and do it anyways, and then that gives other people permission to do the same.
Yeah, this whole idea of courage, when you think about it, it's like, by definition, to do something courageous, there has to be fear. Mm-hmm. So I think the misnomer is like, oh, well, it's like, it's easy for somebody else to do. It's like, they're not afraid of it. It's like, then that's not courage, and that's not overcoming fear. And so everybody has that. That is like the act by definition of courage.
Yeah, I never really thought of it that way. I guess courage is doing the thing despite the fear. And so you can't be courageous without being afraid. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And like, I always start super, super micro, right? It's like, going and launching a huge company, that's a lot of fear to overcome, and a lot of like, that's a kind of, think about it actually similar of like willpower or discipline. And the people that have, like, you look at, that have the most discipline or willpower, they're actually not using it at all. They've just designed their lives in a way where, okay, now, well, they have this meeting they have to go to, they have to prep, and then they have a friend at the gym, so they have to meet them, whatever works for the person. And similar for fear, it's like there's still fear, but it's just like you've figured out a way to make it so small that, like, you could take a step before you run a mile. And so it's just like taking that first step, then all of a sudden you're taking several steps.
Yeah. I know we keep talking about starting the podcast and starting podcasts, but it's like, you interview a lot of, CEOs and founders of companies, and you just, touched on that, like, starting a company is the same thing. Like, I'm curious what some of the themes and lessons that you've learned from interviewing these, successful CEOs and founders. Have you found anything that's worth sharing, or that has impacted you in the way that you handle your day to day?
Yeah, I mean, probably tons, right? One of the biggest ones that I often remind myself of is, people are just people. No matter where you are, traveling anywhere. And I wrote about this a little bit when I did a year in South America and came back, and it was just like, people are just people. They love to connect, love, dance, eat good food, hang out with their families, and have freedom and be free of suffering. And whether that's like in a little village somewhere in South America, or, a tech CEO somewhere, anywhere in the world, they have their own insecurities, they have their own problems and challenges, and usually they have set up a system that was interviewing somebody, and I asked him who's the happiest person he knows, and he thought about it, and there's this guy on his team. He said he's perfectly applied, and I really liked that framing of perfectly applied, and something that he's naturally good and curious about, but is also challenged by a little bit, enough where he's improving and he has that feedback loop. And I think a big lesson for me is, I don't love the framing of anything like perfect. I guess what I've observed for me is, I default to this unachievable perfection. It shows up in my language a lot too. I've observed over the past couple of years of therapy of like, oh, I say like the ideal scenario or the perfect weekend or the blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, that's good directionally, but what does that mean next Tuesday? And so a lot of the themes and patterns around just coming up, constantly finding a challenge and then ways to overcome them, but in a way that feels easy. So that means like solving their own problem, or another huge one. There's a book with the same title of Who Not How. And by default, when we want to solve these problems, anybody, it's like, how do I solve this problem? And all these founders of companies and people who have like achieved really big things, they don't ask how do they solve the problem. They say, who has already solved the problem and can maybe help me, or who has done this before and maybe they could give me a referral. And so that's been a huge lesson of who, not how.
Yeah, I like that. So I want to talk about, we touched on your drive for optimization, for analyzing your life. I think that there is, if you spend any time on LinkedIn or on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, I feel inundated and just bludgeoned with 10x your life, manage your schedule, do 3 days worth of work in one day, like be better, work out at 3 a.m. and then run a marathon at 4 when you're off. It's just like this constant bludgeoning of like, you need to be better. You're not doing enough. You are leaving so much on the table, right? And so do you ever feel like you are too much in the pursuit of trying to figure it all out and to maximize your life? And like, how do you avoid, getting sucked into that too much and not actually just enjoying the moment and accepting yourself for where you are right now?
It's a great question. And it's probably like the highlight of what I've been thinking a lot about this entire year, really, where understanding, and everyone's different in what works for them and what they want to do versus what they feel like they should do. And for me, this distinction between wanting and shoulding was like a huge aha moment, where so much of my life, pretty analytical, and there's areas of my life that served me like really well. And then there's some areas of my life that it hasn't. And so, as with anything, there's dials to it. And for me, this idea of wanting versus shoulding shows up all the time of, I should be working more. I should be waking up earlier. I should write this thing. I should film another episode. I should start this other side business. And that's an exhausting way to live. Mm-hmm. And even like looking on social media, you should be doing this, you should do this, 10x, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, these are these micro nuggets saying you by default aren't good enough.
Yeah.
And anybody that's like got really good momentum in their life somewhere started with micro momentum. And so hard mode is to feel like you're not good enough and you're not doing it. Easy mode is to find clues of, you're actually already doing this. How do I do more of this? And run these mini experiments. And one of the framings that I really like around this is the idea of be, do, have versus have, do, be. And most people, myself very much included, think have, do, be of like, once I have, this, big career, this big following, blah, 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 then I'll be able to do the things that I want to do and be the person that I want to be, that sort of thing. But in reality, it works the exact opposite. It's like be, do, have is once you are being the person that you want to be, you're going to just do those things that you want to do and you'll have what you want to have. Mm. And for me, oftentimes that looks like opting out of the default option or the default choices, whether it's social media on my phone doesn't really work out well for me. I found myself scrolling, then I'd go to bed late. And so I just deleted it from my phone. And I like use social media professionally too. And so I have somebody that does it for me, and like I have built systems for me to check it before. And sometimes I have to re-download it on the phone to like double check something, but then I'll most recently I'll let myself use it on the weekends and then I'll just delete it Sunday. Or going back to, for me, like I really like I want to trick myself sometimes into finding progress. And so again, it's like seeing all this stuff on social media. It's like, you're not doing enough. There's more and more. Oh, this person just built 25 AI agents, is making, $35K MRR. Oh, I should be doing that. I should learn this, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I know I can only do a few things at once, and I could do anything I want, but I can't do everything. Yeah. At least not at once. And so picking a few of these small bets and saying this is the focus for the month or the quarter, and then letting those data points come in and say, this is actually really working. These things aren't working at all, so I'm going to stop doing that. Like I was doing this side consulting for a local business owner, And for like 6 months, I was dabbling. I've done different consulting over the years, and this was for local SEO and some AI automations. And I thought, like, yeah, I think that this will be interesting and fun. It was at first, and then it started not to be. I was like kind of dreading, like, doing an energy audit of my calendar and being like, wait a minute, I'm kind of dreading doing these updates each week. And I was partnering with someone to white label the actual the local SEO part of it that I would double check, but I still was just not feeling it was aligned. And I had this realization again. It's like, oh yeah, I don't have to do this. I don't have to do any of this stuff. What do I actually want to do? And so like I fired that client. It's a little hyperbolic, but like I was just like, yo, this is no longer aligned. We're month to month anyway. And so I think giving yourself or giving myself the permission to say, what is it that I want to do? And you don't have to do anything. Law of inertia is the most powerful force in the world. It's like object in motion tends to stay in motion, right? So it's like, oh, I'm in this relationship. Oh, I'm in this job. Oh, I'm in this city. And for me, the most powerful things have happened when I tried to remove that and say, well, if I wasn't in this relationship right now, would I start to be in this relationship tomorrow? Or if I wasn't in this job right now, would I apply to be in this job tomorrow? And sometimes, oftentimes we know those answers deep down. It's just a matter of like playing with the logical brain of like, oh, like, do I quit? What do I do? But I've yet to be let down when I've had this like intuitive understanding and belief, and that has allowed me to do things like quit the job and move to Austin and then travel South America or start a side business or start a marketing agency or these different things, or like outreach somebody and like DM somebody whose, book I read or podcast I listened to. And then I start to be like, oh, this is just fun. I want to do this more. And that's just kind of close the loop on these things I should be doing. Oh, I should be, reading more, writing more, doing whatever, versus I really want to do this. So I'm going to build the life around that.
No, I love that. I talk about it a lot. I think you use the correct term of inertia, but I always tell people that momentum is like the most powerful force in the world. And inertia is probably what I mean, but like, getting an unmoved object moving is the most difficult thing to do. But once it's moving, it just wants to keep moving, And so I used to, at one time I have my personal training certification. I got it because I wanted to know everything that a personal trainer knew. I didn't really want to be like a personal trainer. I was just like, I don't want to pay somebody $100 a week to learn all of this. I'm just going to go to school and learn what they know so that I can be my own personal trainer. But then I started helping people that I knew for free to start their fitness journeys, and would talk about this thing. Like, it seems so impossible because you're stagnant force, but just going to the gym and then going to the gym again. And then before you know it, it's going to feel effortless to go to the gym. You're just going to keep rolling with that momentum. And I found that in so many things in my life, and dating, and in the way that I eat and the way that I show up, like how I go to bed, and what time I wake up, like all of it. It's just like once you get in the habit of it, everything gets easier and easier. And so, yeah, it's a big thing that I try to focus on in my life, and tell other people when I'm working with other people, like that force is on their side,
Right. And like another big part of this, another force, like I think it's the second law of thermodynamics, where the default state of the universe is chaos and disorder and entropy. And so it's like stars explode, buildings collapse, muscles atrophy if you don't use them, relationships die off if you don't maintain them. And so what it boils down to is like, you could clean your house, but it's going to get messy. And so and you only have so much time, energy, focus in a given day or week. So knowing that the default state is disorder, where and how can I maybe insert a few like systems of order of, okay, well, health is really, really important. Like health to me is my number one core value. And if you were to look at my calendar, you'd be able to see that because I literally exercise every day. And there was a period in my life where that definitely wasn't the case, but it wasn't until like I intentionally made the decision of like, oh, it's so clear to me that health is number one, because downstream of health, everything is touched.
Yep.
And, but it wasn't like I just woke up one day, I was like, oh, health is number one. It's gonna be easy. It's like I made sort of a pact with myself, and then also a bunch of micro evidence to make it easier that I do exercise, even if it's just walking outside for a mile. Mm-hmm. And but again, you can't do all these things. The default case is disorder. Like I think the average American gets like 123 notifications on their smartphone every single day, and so that's like every few minutes we're getting pulled into more and more disorder. And so what are the things that at any given time we value most that we're going to create some order and structure around?
I like that. Yeah, I like what you said earlier about I can do anything, but I can't do everything. I think especially in this country, there's so much opportunity available to us. And like, there really is any opportunity that anyone wants is available to them. It might be harder to achieve for some, but all you have to do is put in the work and decide to go down that path, right? And for some people, that path might take 4 or 5 years. Some people, it might take 12 or 15, but it's all doable. It's all achievable. And I think a lot of people tend to write this story that like, oh, that's not for me. I want to do that, but I didn't grow up in the right town or with the right family, or I didn't go to the right college, or, I'm not tall enough or whatever. And it's so patently false. Like, we can do anything that we want, especially in this day and age. Like, it's just so easy to create a life that you dream about and commit to it, but you can't do everything. You do have to pick. You have to make a decision and say, this is where I'm focusing my attention. Because if you spread yourself too thin, like, you're not going to make any distance on any of them, and eventually you're just going to kind of peter out and give up and say, and reconfirm that negative bias that you have of like, see, I told you I couldn't do it. I told you if like I had rich parents, I would have been able to do it, but I couldn't. I really like that. There is like, I think I suffer from that sometimes of just like, I want to do so many things, and I have done so many different things in my life that to some people, my resume or my bio or whatever looks just like a little all over the place because I wanted to try so many things, I'm getting, wiser with my age of this, like, I need to refine and like focus my attention on the things that I really want and look at the long game of like, you can't do something for 1 year and then be like, well, why didn't it work out? And it's like real progress takes years of continued action and commitment,
Yeah. One of my favorite books is Cal Newport's So Good They Can't Ignore You. And he offers a really good lens through this where he talks about the traditional advice is, it's just like passion mindset, and it's like find your passion and then you go off and do big things. And the alternative lens he offers is what he calls like a craftsman's mindset. And so he's like, the passion stuff is the wrong way to look at it. Instead, like a craftsman gets really good at their craft and then they become passionate about it. And so I think a mistake that some people, myself very much included, could get into is like, well, I haven't found my passion yet. What is my passion? When in reality, the passion part comes after getting really good at something. Of course, you have to decide what you want to get really good at, and maybe there's a little bit of alignment in what you apply yourself to there. But it's like give it time, like you're saying, of, oh, I'm just kind of interested and curious about this, or I've just really resonate with some of the people in this space. I'm going to learn the skills. All of a sudden you get pretty good at it, and then you're really passionate about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I faced that with this. Like, I knew that I couldn't start a podcast and just like put out 3 episodes and then be like, well, that didn't work. You know, it's like, if I really care about this, I have to think about it in the terms of years and not months, you know? And so it's like, yeah, there's no way that this is going to be successful in 4 or 5 episodes, to the idea of like, what could success look like as a podcast host, you know? Like, it's just not possible. But I think it's easy for me to think short-sightedly of like, oh, well, if the first 3 episodes come out and I'm not getting thousands of listeners and, you know, socials are blowing up, then like no one cares. It's time to pack it up, you know? And it's like, no, I have to consistently show up and do this if I want any kind of results, you know, and put the work in and become a craftsman and figure out how to be a good host and figure out what my voice is and figure out who my audience is and like, you know, do all of those things so that later down the line, I get to a place where it's just fun and it feels natural and the work has paid off, you know?
Yeah. And I would actually also offer an alternative framing too, where a lot of these things, back to like, you could do anything, but not everything. It's like, what are you choosing to do? You're setting this up. And so I think a lot in terms of experiment framing. And when I set an experiment, I like to set it in a way where it's sort of rigged in my favor, regardless of outcome. And so, for example, when I started writing my weekly newsletter, I remember exactly how I set it up. I just opened a Google Doc and I said, I'm going to do this for 3 months every week. I could do that for every week for 3 months and see how I feel. And 100% controllable by me. And then I also, going into it, was like, I had written a little bit online before, but I was like, oh, I learn just from doing this. I learn. And so literally, even if nobody out there opened up the newsletter, or if it didn't grow at all, I still was learning and it was fun for me. And I was just doing this experiment.
It's still a growth opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I guess the thing I was offering for you is observation is like, oh, you're telling yourself, thinking years in, you know, success for you to really find your voice in the audience and for it to blow up, versus like, to me, this is my best Saturday. Like, we get to hang out. Mm-hmm. You have this project that you're working out. You reached out to me. That sort of like reestablishes our relationship. We got to jam. Like, I'm in this really cool studio and connect with you. It's like, this is sick. Even if like next week you're like, hey, actually that podcast thing, I'm not doing it. I'd be like, okay, we still had a great conversation.
No, I mean, that's a really great point. I mean, that this is, when I think about what my ideal Saturday is, this is it. Yeah. Like, I'm having a great conversation, recording it, and hopefully capturing something cool that I can share with other people. And all the things that do come from it. I mean, yeah, just like you said it perfectly. Like, yeah, we're connecting, we're having great conversation. That's all I want to do, you know?
Yeah. And I only offer that just to like take off the pressure, because it's like, yeah, starting this new thing and trying to think of like how to really blow it up. And it's like, that's great. That's like, ambitious people do that. And they think like, fast forward. That's my brain constantly is like, oh, how do I do more of this? What would 10 look like? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, whoa. What if this right here was good and good enough? Mm-hmm. And just having the trust. I think it kind of comes down to the trust of, you'll do the thing, run the experiment, and then see what happens from there.
Yeah. No, I really like that. So this kind of like leads me into something that you wrote about on your blog, which is this AIM flywheel, right? This concept of actions, interests, magnets, and how it can create real momentum in your life. Can you explain a little bit more about what that means and like how you've applied it in your life?
Yeah, I think so many examples of what I found really useful, at least, is kind of going back to trusting that that curiosity or following my own excitement that like leads me to this actions. And what I found, like specifically just like tactical example for the newsletter, is if I'm going to do something, how I learn is through running my own experiments. And so by running my own experiments, whether it's starting a podcast or a blog, or like I really love not only AI tools, but AI tools as a lens of self-awareness. And so I've like used a few prompts that have been like really, really impactful for me. And things of like, from like a psychological sense of like looking at my shadow and asking ChatGPT, knowing everything it knows about me, like, what do you think my shadow would be, and what would be ways for me to work on that? Or even little things like,
What do you mean by shadow?
yeah, so like shadow comes from, like, I think Carl Jung was the originator of this idea of shadow work. And our shadow self is exactly this part of us that we try to hide, and often maybe is can be holding us back in some ways. And so for me, I have shadow around, I've mentioned it before, of like not being good enough, or and really being almost paralyzed by action because I want the perception to be good enough. And so when I think of like just certain insecurities, where like I had this like a little red rash here, and like I went to the dermatologist, they're like, yeah, that's nothing, but it's like that perception of it, of like, oh, and so I sometimes like grow my hair out a little bit right there. And or another thing, like I'm 5'5", so shorter than average, and I'm sharing these things because it's like, if I try to act like, oh, I'm gonna hide these things, versus just like they are what they are, and it's almost this sense of relief, like I don't have to hide behind like by default I have to like work harder, blah blah blah, like what if I just was who I was? And so through that lens of like shadow work, of like, where does the shadow try to paint a picture of somebody just to like overcompensate, right? And that sort of thing is like endlessly fascinating for me, because it's grounded on like who I am, and how even it's a little bit of a perpetual loop of like, I love even like the analytical stuff kind of comes from not being good enough in the shadow. So I have to balance this idea of like doing versus being. And that has been a challenge for me, because even by default, it's like back to the should versus like wanting. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to should, like I should just want more. Oh, I'm shoulding again, right? And so it's like, how do you actually just get to the being? And these are experiments that I run of like little things on, I interviewed a mental performance coach for elite athletes, like NBA players, NFL players, UFC fighters.
Yeah.
And his big thing was just checking in with yourself throughout the day of, how does it feel to be me in this moment? And so I put it on my phone like three times a day, just a quick check-in. Sometimes I would write it, and I found there's some friction there if I'm at my computer. So I'll just go on a walk and then record just like an audio thing of like, checking in with me, of like taking a deep breath, feeling like the wind on my face or the sun like hitting me, and just sharing, how does it feel to be me in this moment? And I'll do this for a while, and like even before coming over here, I took a moment in my car before walking in here and just checked in, like, how does it feel to be me in this moment? And that is a useful thing that I've just followed my curiosity. This helps me. I write about that, and then people reply to my newsletter being like, wow, this was really helpful, thank you. And I'm blown away by that, dude, of like people, I run these tests, and then people are hearing about it, reading it, using it, and like thanking me. And so I've had these moments throughout my life where I'm like, note to self, man, do more of this, like figure out a way to do more of this, because like you love it, you're getting really good feedback, and that takes place of like this aim flywheel, or these different flywheels, which really can be compressed of what I wrote about last week. I really now just think of it as resonance and evidence.
Yeah, it's an important part of the feedback loop. I mean, we talked about, trying to commit to this. And I like what you said about like, yeah, I'm going to do this for 3 months and see how I feel about it. Like regardless of what kind of feedback I'm getting. But the feedback part is super important. Like I've talked about this with musicians a lot. It's just like, you can write the best song that you're just so hyped about. But if nobody hears it but you, it doesn't feel like it's meaningful. Like sharing the thing is the thing, and like not to like get famous or become, an influencer or, whatever. It's just that connection of like, I did this thing and somebody else got it, they got it. And I chased that my whole life through making music and like making film and I'm chasing it right now. Like I want to connect with people and I want people to get it, but it doesn't have to be millions of people. It doesn't even have to be thousands of people. Like 15 people getting it is like all it takes, to go, oh man, like somebody really resonated with that. Like I'm going to do more. I'm going to keep going because like it's creating this connection and that's, vibrating out through the world. And those are the things that I resonate to when people put things out in the world and I connect with it, and so, that's part of that, like putting things out in the world that you are already drawn to,
Right. And like on the other side of it too, if someone's listening or watching to this, it's like, what have you connected to recent? Like just tell that person, send a DM, reply to an email or something. And you're offering that resonance to somebody. Or if you're listening to this, like leave a comment, message, Taylor, like, just trust or follow that resonance.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot more on social. I don't post a lot on social in general, which is another like, I've talked about it on almost every one of these podcasts about my hesitancy to start posting on socials and like really putting myself out there. But what I have been doing for a long time is I just love hyping up people that are doing cool stuff. Like I have so many friends that are creators and doing things. And just like, I love when somebody's posting a video and I'm like, they were scared to post this. I'm like going to leave a comment. I'm going to reply to the story and at the very least give them a fire emoji or something of just like, hey, I see this and it's rad, like keep it up. I love that stuff. And I implore anybody listening to this, like do more of that. If you see somebody putting something into the world and you resonate with it, let them know in whatever small way you can. Support them, hype them, retweet them, reshare them. Like we are the drivers of our world, right? And like the more that we positively reinforce people that are doing positive things that we think are cool, the more they're going to do them. And so I'm big on that train right now of like hyping up as many people as I can that are just doing the damn thing,
Doing the damn thing. Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost like at least in that moment, it's like this fragile, oh my gosh, I just did this. What are people going to think? It's if you get people supporting you, being like, oh, sweet, I could actually do the thing.
Yeah. You totally do the thing.
Yeah.
I want to talk about the network effect. It's another thing that you wrote about. I've read a lot of your like blog posts and this idea of how our friends shape us, even things like happiness or health are shaped by our friends and even their friends. Like, and I'm a firm believer in that. Like, how do you apply that to your life right now? How do you notice when you're drifting into somebody's orbit that like it's just not aligning with who you want to be, and like what are the actions that you take?
Yeah, I think I was first really drawn to that when I forget the stat off the top of my head, but it's like even something like obesity rate is align towards not just your friends, but the friends of your friends. And so like the everyone knows, like, has heard the thing of like, you're the average of your 5 closest friends. And I've heard that over the years. And I think like earlier on in my career, that always kind of rubbed me the wrong way, in the sense of I wasn't loving that average. And then I remember one day I sort of gave myself the permission to include in that average the books I was reading and the podcasts I was listening to. So I was like, that's exceptional company. Like that average is really, really strong, because I like love reading and learning. And then I found it with like actual friends and people back, like with this whole resonance idea of it goes both ways. It's not only like, oh yeah, I like your work, but it's also trusting me and me putting out and being proud of my own work in the things that I'm doing, which then attracts other interesting people who, like somebody like you, are like, yo, I really vibe with what you write and in what you share. And so that to me is like the network effect is both like in person, but then it's back to this asymmetric opportunity of just doing your thing. If you could do your thing online, it blows me away. That this internet thing is still underpriced in 2025, where you could just put something out there and a lot of people can really vibe with it. And then, I mean, I was just on a Zoom call with somebody a couple days ago that I met on LinkedIn, and she lives in San Francisco. Has got like a really solid business, and her goal is she's like doubling her income. And she sent me this. By the end of the conversation, we both came up with, like, she was excited to hit, I forget, something like 40K MRR or something for this business that she's doing. And so she was texting me she's like, in 1 month from now, I want to hit this number. And I'm like, this is awesome. Like, you know, I'm getting excited about, not to say that it has to be like a numeric or a financial outcome, but just something that people care deeply about. That's like a new, different playing field of, okay, this is what excellence looks like in any sort of craft.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, our friends are super important to our habits and to just like our reality in general. Like what are we being surrounded by? Are we surrounding ourselves with people that are curious and motivated and positive? Or are we surrounded by people that are negative and reinforcing bad habits on a daily basis? And like, it's really easy to get sucked into the gravitational pull of those around you. So I think, I really resonated with that. Like, I think I subconsciously have been doing that for a long time, of just like trying to surround myself with people that were living as close to the way that I wanted to be living as possible. Not how I was living necessarily today, but like where I want to be, you know? It makes it a lot easier.
Where do you want to be?
That's a great question. I've spent it's been a really like big couple years of soul searching, of loss, of like stripping myself down to what the core things are that I'm really focused on. And I just keep coming back to like, I really want to be tied into community. I really, really just like, I've spent most of my life traveling and being kind of this unanchored vagabond. And I'm just like craving roots and being a part of a community, and especially a city. And I that city for me is Austin. Like I love this city. I've always loved this city, and I rep it hard. And so connecting to community and being a positive driver in that community is really important to me. And I am somebody that takes my health and my fitness mentally, emotionally, physically, like very seriously. And so I'm trying to surround myself with people that are in the same vein of like, I'm trying to put more positivity into the world than negativity. and I'm trying to give more than I take, and so that's where I want to be. I'm not perfect at it, but those are my goalposts of like, am I adding positive experiences to whoever's life it is that I'm interacting with, whether it's the barista at my coffee shop or the really annoying, customer service rep that I have to talk to on the phone to cancel this thing, which is like, an exercise in patience sometimes, or a person that I'm interviewing on the podcast, like whatever it is, it's like, am I putting good into that, or am I putting a negative spin on things? Am I being a dick in traffic? Just these little micro things of like putting the good in the world and connecting to as many people as possible, showing up consistently. And I want to be the person that like people can count on,
What does that feel like when you do that?
At its most basic, it feels light. I feel lighter, in my body. The world and the madness that it is feels less crushing, when I'm trying to put joy out instead of worry and fear and doubt. And when I'm trying to not just think of myself, but think of the other people that are affected in everything that I do, I feel lighter. I feel more like convinced that like everything is so fucking important, because my brain is really easy to go to places where I just take myself way too seriously, and I take this experience way too seriously, and I take money way too seriously, and when I'm in the flow of who I was just talking about, like I let go of all of those, my tight grip on all of those things, and I'm just okay in the world, and I'm just stoked that there are other people around that I get to experience it with.
I love that. I guess the reason why I ask is I think about this a lot too, of what is the thing I think I want versus what is the feeling that I actually want. And it's usually, that's why I love this emotional stuff, because it's the one really steering the ship. And so whether that's like, okay, I want $10 million or want this new business, whatever, it's like, why do you want that? And then underneath that, it's like, well, I just want financial freedom and independence. Why do I want that? Well, I just want really this feeling of lightness and security and following whatever it is that I want to do. And it's like, well, in a lot of ways, I'm already doing that right now. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, you're literally doing it right now too. And so I think that's cool to be able to see that in a different way of, okay, what is, and by the way, my word or mantra of the year is to be light as well. And so that really resonates. The beginning of the year, I love year end recapping and analyzing because that's what my brain does. And then I'm like, all right, beginning of the year, let's go. Like really excited, started doing all these things. The word of the year is be light. And in January, I was like over optimizing all this shit. And I'm like, dude, this does not feel light at all. And so I just gave myself the permission to set the direction and aim on some things, but not to track it and not to over optimize. That felt heavy.
I love that. I mean, that's kind of why I asked you earlier, like at some point over optimizing is crushing you or crushing me or us, like not you in particular. And so like, it's a hard way to find the balance, I'm really hard on myself, when I get really analytical about my life and where I want to go and where I am now and who I should be or want to be, I'm brutal on myself. I'm brutal on myself in the gym. And, like I have these giant expectations for myself. So if I'm constantly living in a place of analyzing all of that stuff, I'm just not very kind to myself. And so allowing myself also to just be human and to just exist and to not be perfect and to not have a perfectly optimized day while still, you know, having these, waypoints that are guiding my general path and checking in regularly to see how I'm doing. That's super important. But over optimizing and over analyzing all of the ways in which we could and should be better is very dangerous for me, you know.
Likewise, and it turns out that's like not the optimal way of like if you were to treat anybody else how you talk to yourself.
Yeah.
They'd be like, bro, what do you like? I'm not gonna be friends with you. Like
Yeah.
you're a jerk.
Yeah,
and
you're
so,
a dick. Your expectations are way out of control.
Yeah, and so it's like that's not actually how it works to get that outcome. That's like having the negative effect. And so on the other side of it, it's not like, oh, you're perfect and you are abundant and all those things. Like that at least in my experience, that doesn't really work either. But there's somewhere in between where this idea of unconditional love, in particular unconditional self-love, is what I've been playing around with recently, because I'm the same way. I want to optimize stuff. I like having some structure, and I know that when I wake up early and go to the gym first thing in the morning, I feel great. But also, like, I was up till 1 o'clock on Thursday night, like working on something. And so I usually go to this Austin Writers Club every Friday at 7 a.m. And so I gave myself permission not to go to it because I needed rest. And like, that sounds simple, but like, I normally would just be like, oh, just wake up, go do it and go to the next thing. And this unconditional love for myself means like sleeping in. And then I slept in till like 8:45 or on Friday. And I just kind of felt behind on the day. And I was like, this is it. This is what I, trained for. Because I felt so mad at myself for like, dude, you're behind. You didn't go to the writing club. You like to wake up early and do this thing. It was like, it's gonna be okay. And
you like to wake up early, but obviously sometimes you like to sleep in late. And like you have to. There has to be the yin and the yang. Like it can't all be perfection and optimization. And like, yeah, sleeping in fucking feels amazing sometimes. It's like, you know what? I do want to just lay in bed and hit snooze 10 times and then, read an article on my phone while I'm cozy in bed. Like it can't all be perfect mornings,
Yeah.
That is a perfect morning sometimes, like it can't always be this over optimized morning.
Yeah. And just recharging the batteries.
Yeah. You got to find the balance, and I think that's super important. And it's definitely something I wanted to talk to you about because I see all the optimization side of you and I'm just like, where is the, hey, you know what? I'm going to eat a bag of Doritos and like watch a shitty TV show and just like not care for a little while about all of the stuff that I'm analyzing and tracking and all of that stuff.
Yeah. In a big part of it that I found helpful for me is this was a little bit back more to like my more of like optimizing days, but just setting pre-established rules. And so I don't have to make the decision later. It's like the discipline thing of I'm not actually using discipline because I've just designed the environment. And so little things like, after I read The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss, he does this like slow carb diet thing, and one day out of the week is a cheat day. And I read that book. I wasn't trying to lose weight or anything, but I was like, oh, this sounds like an interesting experiment. So I did it for a month, and then I lost a couple pounds, and I like felt just like I like lost some like maybe like weight in my cheeks, and I was just like, oh, this just feels like a better way of being. And I still will have like sweets and carbs and stuff just one day of the week, and then I've like done that for 7 years. I haven't thought twice about it. And so when it's like, oh, do I want a dessert at dinner? It's like, I will have that. And, but just on Saturday. And even that in this stage of my life, I would never break that like earlier, but now it's like, oh, my girlfriend and I went to like a friend's place for dinner, and like they had it was like, it doesn't matter, I'll have a suite, I'll have a, I'm flexible on it. But the more that I could create this, even if it's fake structure, that has helped for me. But then zooming out of, okay, does this still resonate with me, and do I still want to do that? Like that's the yin and the yang, I think, of going day to day, and then like all of a sudden a few months and quarters and then years go by. Then that's why I like the year end time, or time to just go on walks and be like, what's feeling most alive for me right now.
Yeah, I love that. All right, I want to switch gears because I want to talk about something that we have a lot in common, and that's living abroad. I remember sitting in the restaurant of the resort that we were at in Playa del Carmen 2-3 years ago, when we were talking about our experiences living abroad. And since then, we've spent a lot of time living in other countries, and we haven't really checked in much about it. But we've both lived in other countries and been expats, and I want to know, first of all, what that experience was like for you, as starting and making the decision to do it, and cutting the cord and jumping, which is there's a lot of logistics involved. And then, what kind of benefits did you get from that?
Yeah. I love to talk about this stuff. So the way that it came to be for me was, had this idea, as with all these other things, there's probably a theme here, was curious about it, and was thinking, I've just had this pull to South America of like it just sounds like an adventure. It sounds cool. I hadn't been there at all. And so had this idea that I was living in Austin for a few years. What would it look like if I was a digital nomad in South America? And I figured I'd do it for a year or so, but that was too scary. I couldn't just like do that. And so used another mantra, test and invest. And so we were in Costa Rica, I think, for a company retreat in 2022. Mm-hmm. And so I tested it out. I extended my stay there solo for 10 days. And I was like, would I like this, digital nomad travel sort of thing? And it was awesome. I tested it out. And so that was a December. And I remember writing it down. Okay, I'm going to pull the trigger on this next year. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'm going to do it. And so I had the conviction from the test, and there's still fear, right? Of what do I sublease my place? Do I sell my stuff? Then got clear on that. Sold the majority of my things, put the rest in a 4x4 storage unit, and told myself, I'm just going to do this for 3 months. I knew it would probably be longer than that, but that commitment sounded like too much. So structured it in a way that 3 months I could just turn around and be like, that was cool. And then I also had a friend who has been doing this for years, and he was really instrumental. And that's another theme too, of like, find the people who have already done it. And he plugged me into, we lived together in Colombia for a little bit. He plugged me into the Dynamite Circle, which is like a community of entrepreneurs. And there's a few other like WhatsApp groups. And so that was big. I ended up doing it for the 3 months, being like, this is awesome, I'm going to keep going. So I went to like Costa Rica, Brazil, 4 months in Argentina, and a few other places. And I remember towards the end being like, feeling this contrast of, in many parts, this is amazing. The world is so big, and I'm just now seeing a lot more of it. And there's so much more to see. I need to go all around the world. This is awesome. And on the other end, I remember being in Brazil 11 months in or so, and feeling that this was no longer in alignment, specifically because what I told myself was the most important thing wasn't aligned with what my actions were. And what I was longing for, and what the most important thing was at the time, was finding future wife and having a family. And while I was dating wherever I was going, and that was awesome, being single on that trip, especially in Argentina. And but I was like, am I really putting myself in position that feels aligned, and it feels like it increases the odds of getting the thing that I want? And so I was wrestling with that for a little bit, especially in Brazil. I was in Florianopolis at first, which is amazing, like beautiful beach city. That was like my favorite place in Brazil. Then I went to Rio after that. And it was just such like a contrast of this foreign place. I was learning Spanish. They speak Portuguese there. And so could barely communicate. That was a huge barrier. And was just feeling this internal resistance and uncertainty. And then I had a friend who swore by this relationship coach. And we were in this men's group together, this virtual one. And he brought her on to share a little bit about like how she's helped him navigate a big breakup and different things. And my default sort of, I guess, thinking around this has evolved, but specifically for a relationship coach, it's like, bro, I don't need a relationship coach. Or like any coach, it's like probably a scam. But she was super impressive. And then she offered like a intro sort of thing for anybody in the group. And so I was like, oh, actually, this feels great. I'll talk to her. She was really impressive. She had like business background. And to me, I'm like, oh, if she knows business, then like if she's successful in business, then like it's not a scam or something. I don't know. And so I ended up hiring her, and she was way more of like a therapist than anything else. And she gave me, in addition to doing some of this like inner child work, nothing about like actually dating, really just like inner work, which I happen to love too. And she gave me the advice. She's like, yo, why don't you just go back to Austin just for a little bit, treat it as if you're just visiting there. And so I thought about that, and then I wasn't going to do it. And I was like, wait a minute, actually, this makes a ton of sense. And so I ended up going back to Austin, doing that, and then met my now girlfriend. And that's been like the highlight of my last year and a half has been my relationship with her. And that feels amazing. And so I think the travel thing for me, it's the same sort of theme as all this stuff. It's like getting interested, curious, running an experiment. How do I feel? I thought I wanted to keep doing this. Actually, that doesn't feel in alignment. So then going back. And then the other thing that increased my conviction about going back to Austin was something when I kept on hearing about in these groups, especially around South America, it was like ayahuasca ceremonies, and everything that I heard was, this is brutal. It's like very painful. Some people like freak out, and you're in the middle of the jungle, but like there's a lot of learnings. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't sound like anything that I want to do. Like I like having control, and like that sounds really scary. And so everyone was like, when you're ready for it, you'll know. So I was like, okay, I know I'm definitely not ready for that. And then towards the end of that stint, I found myself literally in a grocery store, and this girl like comes up to me, and she basically was like, have you done plant medicine? Are you familiar with plant medicine? And that she thought I was ready for ayahuasca, which sounds like she was leading me into some sort of thing or package she was selling. She wasn't, and I was just default skeptical. I was like, no, yeah, I've heard of it, but I don't think I'm ready, or I don't think I want to do that. But ended up for sitting with it, getting a juice with her the next day, and being like, yeah, this is crazy. I'm not going to do this, but like, what's been your experience with it? And then thought about.
You led with curiosity.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. And then I was looking for reasons not to do it, to be honest. But then I couldn't. Not only could I not find any, I was feeling really aligned to do it. And so I ended up doing it. Had this like, I would describe it as the most intense, profound, beautiful experience that I've ever had. In that order, the intensity is definitely number one. Mm-hmm. And but it's so many learnings from that, man. And I think that I needed a big invitation like that, otherwise I wouldn't have done it. And I also needed to have been like followed my curiosity up until that point to be able to. Actually, I think you probably could do that like somewhere in Austin or something, but having traveled for a year and hearing about it more, and then finally ended up doing it, like I look back at that experience of like very, very appreciative of the whole travel experience.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Thanks for sharing your experience on with the ayahuasca as well. I know that's helped a lot of people that I know, and it's obviously growing in popularity, plant medicine of all kinds, and I think that there's a lot of really useful benefits out there. But yeah, I identify with so much that you said about living abroad and just feeling like it wasn't aligned with where you want to be. And, it was very similar for me that you kind of get addicted to the world is so big. And the reality of my experience is like, I wish that I could live everywhere. I want to know what the sunset looks like in every country, in every city. I want to know a certain neighborhood like the back of my hand in Tokyo and in Beijing and in Greece. And, I want to know the world. But like you said earlier, I can't do everything, but and so like, what do I really want to do? And one of the things that just kept hitting me over the head while I was living abroad was like, I felt so disconnected from community because, and you might have had a little bit better experience with expat groups and entrepreneurs, but like everyone that I met that was English speaking was transient. I'm here for a month. I'm here for 2 weeks. Yep. I'm here, and so like you can't build these long-term connections with people that are constantly leaving. And then for me, I was learning Spanish as dedicating as much time as I possibly could for the 3.5 years. And I was nowhere near conversational. And so having these types of conversations is what drives me. Like whether there's a microphone here or not, this is how I communicate with people. Let's talk about some real shit. I can't do that in Spanish. Mm-hmm. I just can't. There's a great interview with Willem Dafoe who lives in Italy, and he loves it. But he says everywhere I go, I'm always the idiot because my Italian is at the level of a 4-year-old, and that's how my Spanish was. I'm an idiot. I'm speaking in broken sentences and, misgendering things and using past tense instead of present. I'm talking like a 4-year-old would talk, And so there were so many moments where I'm like, God, I see this guy at my gas station every day and he's trying to connect with me. He wants so much to be my friend. And I'm just like, buenas tardes, right. Nos vemos mañana, and like, that's the extent of it. I can't be like, hey, how are you doing? How's your family? Like, tell me where were you born? Like, have you always, just like I could figure those things out, but I couldn't understand the depth of their responses. Like I could ask those questions, and that just made me feel so alone. And, at a time where community mattered so much to me. And I just really missed being able to fluently communicate with other people on a deep level and making lasting connections where it's like, I can say, oh, I really like Mitchell. We're going to meet once a week and do something, for the next year. But most people will be like, oh, I really like you. Yeah, you're really cool. Oh, you're only here for 3 weeks and you already you're going to go do all the touristy stuff that everybody does. So like you don't have a lot of free time and then boom, you're gone. And we'll keep in touch on Instagram,
Right.
And so for me, there was just this part of like, I'm so grateful for spending time in other countries. And I really, really recommend anybody to go do that if they have the chance to do it. And I want to do so much more of it. But it's like, what did I want to do more? What I really wanted to do more was build something meaningful in one place that I wasn't going to leave for a long period of time. And it just didn't feel possible living abroad.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because what we both are sharing from our experiences, it's the amount of that contrast of not having that makes it so much more clear and with a higher conviction of like, yes, community. That's how I felt too, by the way. It's like I value deep, meaningful relationships and conversations. It's really hard to get that when you're traveling for, a couple months at a time, couple weeks at a time. And I just almost took that for granted here. And when I come back to Austin, it's like, oh my gosh, I have so many amazing relationships here. But it wasn't until I traveled somewhere else to see that. And the other like contrast thing that I think is really cool, specifically around learning a new language, similar thing for me. I was learning Spanish, didn't think I was great at it, but it was like fun and interesting to try it. And I think loosely conversational. You can get loosely conversational a pretty short amount of time when you're immersed. And one of the coolest things for me was like learning these words that had different meanings or that didn't translate. Like the Spanish language, I think, is so beautiful, and there's like so much like romantic, like it's a romantic language. There's even words like I'm sorry. In Spanish, they say lo siento, and it's like I feel it, and that's such a better way to say, oh, sorry. It's like, oh, I feel it, like, and or there's some words that don't translate at all to English, which I think is even cooler. Like sobremesa is this idea of like after you're done eating, you just like chit chat at the table. And usually it's like in the States, you're done eating, they're like, all right, here's your check, you ready? They got to flip the table. But pretty much in any Latin country or Spanish speaking country, you're chilling there.
Yeah,
you have your
chilling.
Family, and like they're not rushing you out.
They will never bring you the check unless you ask for it, ever. You can be there for 6 hours. Yeah. It's it takes some getting used to as an American, because we're so into eating so efficiently. Like, bring me more water, bring me the thing, take my bill, bring me the food, blah, 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 boom. And it's like, no, dude, come on in. This is an experience where you came here to be here for a while, you know? Yeah. And we're going to leave you the hell alone too. Like, we're not going to come by every 5 seconds. Is there anything else you need? Do you need more water? And it's like, no, it's like, if you need something, let us know. Otherwise, just chill.
Yeah. And it's just so cool to see like the passion and the love and that contrast there. Not to say we don't have it here, but like it just looks different often.
It looks a lot different. I learned so much because I also lived in Buenos Aires, and I learned so much from my Argentine friends. I've never met a group of people that love so fiercely, like their friend, like the way that Argentines connect with each other, and there's no surface level stuff, and they get right to it, and they get in your face, and they hug you, and they want to know how you're really doing. You know, like it's impressive. You know, most Americans would unfortunately find it almost offensive, because it's just like, I remember like meeting people. Oh, you're from America. Did you vote for Trump? Like, what do you think of blah, blah, blah? They just want to know. They're not going to be like, do you like the weather? Like they want to know about you. They want to ask you tough, difficult questions. They want to, why aren't you married? How come you don't have kids? Like, what? No one would ask me that in the United States, but they want to know. And it's, I don't know. I loved that.
Same. Yeah. Really cool to see, almost kind of like that unconditional love. They're like, you're there, and they just like full acceptance. They're not judging, what can you do for them or anything like that. And it was really cool to see that.
Yeah. Super cool. Yeah. I'm glad that you had that experience, and I've always been super stoked that we like both kind of had it together at the same time, cause I was on that trip with you in Costa Rica.
Right.
And I set out on my journey about a year after that.
Same question to you, I guess. Any like big takeaways, or like what would you recommend from others based on your experience?
I mean, the big takeaways, I talked about with the LACA community, and just like how isolating it can be, for sure, to not speak the language. Yeah. For a long time, like I think I am very supportive of people going and living somewhere for 3 or 6 months, and doing what you did, finding the expat groups on Facebook and meetups and things of that nature. It's like, you're going to learn so much. But when I moved down there to maybe not move back here, like it was like, this is where I live now, and as I approached that, I found it more and more difficult to like have the things in my life that I really wanted to have. Wasn't impossible, and I definitely like could have built it over 4, 5, 6 years, but there were all these other things where I was just like, everything that I want is back in Austin. You know, all the possibilities that I'm excited about are in Austin. They're not in Buenos Aires, you know? And so, yeah, the culture thing, like I really learned to slow the hell down and that I'm not important. Because like there's just this huge lack in Latin American culture of thinking that you're the most important person. And Americans, we love to think that we're the most important. I've been in line for 15 minutes. It's like, yeah, so is everybody behind you. You know, like you're not the only person here, you know? Like, can't you see there's only one person working behind the counter? That's probably not what they want to be doing, you know? And so in Latin America, like this idea of like everything needing to be perfect, everything needing to be fast, my needs are more important than the next person's needs. This is just like a lack of selfishness, you know? And there's so many, you know, in Mexico and in Argentina, people that I know that, you know, have very little money that would just like give you whatever they had, you know? And you don't see that a lot in the United States. And so it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about how I want to show up more and yeah, not taking myself so seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember one of my top takeaways too was also that this idea that happiness is a verb, not a noun, and that the happiest people were all doing things that they loved, of like dancing or like having really awesome meals with their families or into their specific interests, both expats and locals in these different places. And I was just amazed by, I would meet some people and they would tell me how old they were, and they looked so much younger than their age. And I was like, you can't fake that. Like I met this dude who's like 65. He looked 40. And I was like, are you serious? And he just loved what he was doing. He was this Canadian dude
just
traveling.
Wasn't stressed and like, not being crushed by time. I think we crush ourselves with time in the United States, you know, like
more.
Yeah. And more, hurry up, wasting time, you know, like gotta be X by the time I'm 28 and I gotta be there by the time I'm 32 and I gotta have 3 kids by the time I'm 30. So like we have all these time things that we are shoving ourselves into that like I think unnecessarily ages us and stresses us and, you know, forces us to make decisions before we're ready to, or commit to a partner when we're not really sure, but we have to be committed to this timeline that we made up, or a job or whatever, you know, like it's, I don't know. We really shoot ourselves in the foot, I think, when we're operating in the concept of time and letting it do the dictating.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
I did want to talk just real briefly before we wrap this up that, yeah, we've talked about this a little bit, but you stopped drinking alcohol recently. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so let's see. I think it was June of 23. June of 2023. I had was going into this ayahuasca ceremony, and like to go into it, there's like no booze, no caffeine, no meat, no added sugar for a couple weeks, I think, going into it. And I ended up having this very powerful experience. And by the way, when I talk about my ayahuasca experience, I can't speak for anyone else's. Like there's a lot of, I think, bad actors when it comes to these shamans and different groups. The place that I went to was triple verified from 3 separate friends. And so I had a lot of trust and definitely did some research going in, and everyone has different experiences. But my experience was, the thing I kept going back to was health is number one among many other things for me. And health has been a core value for me for a while. I've gotten really into self-development and, playing around with optimizing things in my life and in health for probably like 8 or 9 years, and haven't really drank that much the last several either. But, was thinking, it was like, okay, well, if health is number one, what role does that play in my life? And was, trying to make this justification. It was like, oh yeah, well, if I'm going out, I'm social, I like to have a good time. And if I'm going out with friends or whatever, I can't not drink. And I was like, well, I probably can. And so, as with anything, set up a mini experiment. And I said, for a month, I'm just not going to drink and just like see what that looks like. And then that was like over 2 years ago, and I haven't like thought twice about it. And I've told myself, if I want to have a drink, I will. But every aspect of my life continues to get better over these last couple of years. And so I'm like, there's no part of me that's like, oh man, I'm really missing out. And to the contrary, is like this idea of it in my head, it was completely false, of like that I had to have it, of like, oh, that's just the default, like grab a drink with a friend. I also love sparkling water, and so I've like gone out before too and just had sparkling water. It's like, oh, this is actually cool. I'm like actually like going out dancing, and this is like just like a good workout. I like exercising too. And I also value like going to bed early and having deep, meaningful conversations. So there wasn't a lot of overlap of things I value that I was missing out on. And yeah, it's just like one of those things. And I think today more and more people, it's not like it's funny. I also have a lot of family in recovery. And the observation I've had is it's alcohol is one of the only drug in the world where people think you have a problem if you don't use it.
Yeah.
And
and that's changing. It's changing in a big way.
Yeah, I think that was the case for several years, up until like a couple of years ago, really. And now, like, especially in a place like Austin or other places, it's like not. It's almost. I think we're getting close to the point where the social signal of like smoking a cigarette, I think it's like very clear, like that's like negative sort of signal. I think at some point in some places, not to say there's anything wrong with it, and people, if that's aligned with what they like to do, but also there's such a rise in like, what do you actually want? And the cool thing seems to be like health and wellness and feeling good. And so for anybody, just I'm glad that I framed it in a little experiment, and it's been really cool to have done that.
Yeah, it's as somebody that's in recovery who's been sober for a long time, it's hard for me to get on a soapbox and tell people how amazing it is to not drink and how many benefits it has, because like it obviously comes from a skewed perspective in my case. So I'm always really excited to meet people that have decided to go alcohol free, that aren't in recovery or, identifying as somebody with a substance use disorder. And it's been so exciting for me. I've been sober now for a little over 13 years. And
Nice.
when I started my sobriety journey, there wasn't popular. There wasn't mocktails everywhere. It wasn't, people saying left and right, like, I don't drink, like blah, blah, blah. And like, the younger generation is drinking less than any generation. It's just becoming like not cool to be a drunken mess, when it's always been cool to be a drunken mess. Like, you think of Mad Men and like all of these, all of the, celebrities of the past that we idolize that were, excessively drinking and using drugs. And now it's like, no, being clear-headed and sober and intentional and healthy is what's attractive. And yeah, anybody that I know that is like exploring wellness, like true wellness, spiritual, mental, physical health, really struggles with like, well, where does alcohol fit in on that? Because it's really not feeding any of those things in a positive way. And at the end of the day, it feels like alcohol's main role in our society at this point is to not be left out and to self-lubricate past the stuff that we're talking about, the fear, the 20 seconds of courage. You don't need 20 seconds of courage if you've got 3 shots of JD in you, you're using that as a crutch to get over doing the hard thing from a real place of courage, right? At least I always did. And I know a lot of people who probably identify that with that. So, yeah, thanks for talking about it. I think, people ask me a lot, do you think you'll be sober forever. And I always come back to, even if you told me I could drink like a quote unquote normal person, like I would have no problem just having 2 drinks and being done, I don't know what value that would add to my life. I really don't. It's expensive. It's extra calories that I don't need. It makes me, lose my inhibitions in a way that like I've learned to lose my inhibitions naturally and not need a substance to help me do it, and that's taken a lot of work, but it's been really fun to like get over fear of talking to a girl sober, and I don't know where that would fit on anything positive for me.
Also, one day at a time, too, right? And so, like, I think it's really interesting the dynamics that the recovery community has instilled in, like, working the steps one day at a time, having a place to find your people, sharing what's real and vulnerable and deep in your story, seeing parts of your story in other people. And, like, I think that's just, like, a microcosm for a lot of these areas of life of what are you trying to do? Find people to do it with. Don't get inundated on like this huge rest of my life. I can't drink at my wedding, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry about that. One day at a time. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty profound. I'm curious from your perspective, any other like lessons or insights that you've gained from recovery that have been applied broadly, that could be applied broadly?
I mean, so many. The program that I work is, and working the steps is all about uncovering some of the things that you've touched on, like my childhood insecurities. I'm able to like do work and really trace that, like all of the discomfort that I feel at any given moment I can trace it back to a fear, and that fear is usually that I'm going to lose something that I already have, or I'm not going to get something that I want. Right. And I'm working spiritually to like not have my needs and my well-being based on those 2 things. Am I going to get what I want, or am I going to lose something that I already have that I cherish, So yeah, I really learned to like expand my spiritual life, and kind of try to love myself a little bit more, and really work on humility, being right-sized in a situation. Like I love to tell stories that I'm either like way better than I am or way worse than I am, and so seeing the world through an accurate lens of like where I really sit as a human and as a man, rather than these stories in my head of like, oh, I'm a piece of shit, or like I'm the greatest ever. How come they don't understand how amazing I am and give me everything I want? Like it's like finding that neutrality has been really important for me, and getting alcohol out of the way was just like the first step in the equation.
Yeah. Can you talk more about what you said about the fear? It's either fear of losing what you have, or how did you say that?
Yeah. Losing something that I have, or not getting something that I want, And I truly feel like all of my my negative emotions, resentment, anger, worry, and fear are all wrapped around some form of that. Like you're not going to give me what I want out of this situation. Whether you're a customer service person who's just literally not giving me what I want out of this situation, you're not making it fast enough, or you're not giving me a refund when I asked for one, or whatever, or, you're a girl that I'm really into and you're not really into me, ow, that hurts. I'm not going to get something I want. Why is that? Like, does she think that I'm a piece of shit? Does she think all the negative things that I think about myself in my head are true, and going down that rabbit hole of like, where is my self-worth, and seeing things through a more accurate lens, and being okay, not getting what I want, because most of my life is not getting what I want, And so that spiritual like fluidity of letting things come and go without having to grab onto them and squeeze them and try to keep them in your space,
Yeah. Yeah. And it's almost this idea of getting what you want or wanting what you have. And thinking through of like, what is and so I like your framing on fear of, okay, if this is the thing I'm really afraid of, happening or not happening, it just almost relieves that. It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier, these insecurities. And I love the scene in 8 Mile when Eminem's like, I am a bum, I do live with my mom, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, put it all out there.
Yeah.
And
own it.
in psychology, they say name it to tame it. And so it's like naming whatever this is, this feeling in the body, and then like getting clear on what that's coming from. Then all of a sudden it's not like you understand it more and you can make more informed decisions of what really might be the feeling going on.
Yeah. No, it's true. And it takes a lot of work. It's taken many years of work, and I still struggle with a lot of that stuff, and I still hold on to things that, are probably not for me, but that's where all my pain and discomfort comes from, is like the not accepting what is. I work a lot on that, of accepting what is. I'm also like not a tall person. And that's always sat with me. It's been something that I'm just like, I can't tell you how many times I was like, well, if I was 6'1", it would be game over. Like, cause everything else about me is exactly what people want, and it's like, but I'm not 6'1". I'm never going to be 6'1". So I have to stop telling that story at some point, because I'm just not accepting it, and the second that I accept it, it's just like, there are a lot of girls out there that won't date me because I'm under 6 foot. Fact, but also fact, I've never had a problem dating women. Like, there's a lot of women that are very interested in me, despite the fact that I'm under 6 foot. I'm not for some people, on many levels, height being one of them. But like, there's things about me that people are like, that's not for me, and like, I just have to accept that,
Same. Yeah. I've actually thought about this a lot too. And I think that if I were like the whole, like if I were over 6 foot thing, I think there's been periods in my life where I'm like, oh, I think I could have gotten really cocky. And I would not have liked the person that I was. So I almost look at these as little nudges from the universe of, I have a great deal of like love to give, and what naturally happens in my life of people come to me with questions, and like, it's like fun for me to give love in different ways and show empathy. Like it's almost like inevitable. Like I can't help but to do it. And I love it, and it feels good. And so I use these little like things of, oh yeah, I wonder if I wouldn't have been able, this is part of my gift. And I wonder if that would have been detracted, or if maybe I would have had a different gift if I was, like 6'5" and maybe in the NBA or something.
Yeah.
Also, it's pretty nice on airplanes.
Yeah, it's amazing on airplanes. There are a lot of places where it's like really, really advantageous to not be very tall. Airplanes is like number one for sure. Yeah. But I've also had that same thought. Like, if I was exactly who I am, but like 6'1" or 6'2", like, I don't think I would be that good of a person, because I don't think I would have had to like do the work that I had to do to be the person that I'm proud of being, if that makes sense. Not that people that are taller or whatever, like, are not good people, but I know myself. Like, there has been a level of self-discovery and like growth that has come from the challenges that I just naturally have faced in my life. And honestly, being short is one of those challenges. It's just one of those things that has always been a thing since I was a kid, and it doesn't go away. And it's not something I talk about a ton, but it's there.
I didn't even really consciously think about it, subconsciously a ton, but like it wasn't until a couple years ago that I thought like, oh yeah, maybe this like getting cut from the basketball team and being a little shorter and blah 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 is a real thing. And then and then I just kind of go back to what we were talking about earlier. It's like people are people. I know a lot of very successful entrepreneurs who are in companies or people who are really tall and are miserable.
Yeah.
And so it's like you name the person, everyone's got, that's just part of the human condition.
It wouldn't really fix anything.
Yeah.
It would unlock a certain subset of women. That's it, and yeah, maybe I would have been more successful in hockey and, like a couple of the things where it's like height really played a difference, and was a factor, but that's about it. I'm glad we talked about it. Yeah, it's not something I discuss a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Well, we're gonna wrap up with a couple closers that we ask all of our guests. So we like to talk about messy moments, and you may have already talked about this, or we may have touched on it earlier. But looking back on your life, was there ever a time that was just like really messy and out of control that you look back on now and you were like, oh, that if that hadn't happened, like all of this good stuff wouldn't happen, or like you took a big lesson away from?
Yeah, I think that there's a handful of moments and or periods. I think in my 20s of like drinking a lot on the weekends, having a job that I didn't love, and looking around at like, who do I want to be, or like who's somebody at this company that I see myself as later. I was like, there isn't anyone like that. And then not having the answer, not having it optimized, and then leading to like, okay, I don't know what the answer is, but I'm going to just quit this job and move to a different place. I think this similar sort of thing of throughout like South America, and that time about a month 11 of 12 being like, I don't think this is really aligned anymore. I remember walking around Brazil being like, what am I doing here again? What am I doing in general? And not having the certainty of, okay, before this felt aligned, this is starting to feel a little different. Maybe I go back. And then that uncertainty led to more certainty to doing the ayahuasca, that led to coming back to Austin and relationship with my girlfriend and, doing all these things creatively. And, but in any of these moments, it's like two things happen. One, the moment is tense and like in the body, I feel it. And I want to rationalize it in the brain. And then as soon as I come to, and I'm a verbal processor, so I talk to friends, I talk to people, I go on walks and I'll talk to myself. Now I use AI a lot to like transcribe conversations I have with myself or other people. And so that's how I process, and then getting feedback from others. But then the second thing is it's sort of like I'm looking for this compass, and then I'm like, okay, this is it. Or like I run a little experiment and I say, oh, okay, this is it. Like testing out living abroad. And then I feel the relief in my body, and it's no longer this tense thing. It's like, oh, this just feels aligned. So those are the ones that come to mind.
That's cool. No, I really, you've mentioned it a few times now. Like I love the idea of what does it feel like, I listened to that episode that you did with Brandon.
Yeah.
And what does it feel like to be me right now, but also like, what does it feel like to do this thing? Like what vibrationally, like how do I feel? Am I tense? Am I anxious? Am I trying to force something to happen? Or is it just happening naturally and it feels easy and it's joyous and not stressful? Like those are the things that I try to pay more and more attention to.
Yeah, and for me, those don't come easy. Like I've had to I remember I had the first therapist I had, like this was years ago. I'd be like, okay, cool. Like, how does that feel? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. And well, she's like, okay, but like, how does that feel? And like, I kept on saying the variation of the same thing, and then she's like, okay, like use emotional words, and I was like, huh? And so it's like there's an emotional wheel that you could do and study of like, okay, there's like 8 core emotions like fear, anger, happiness, like sadness, and then underneath there's like resentment. And really like looking at that wheel was helpful, as well as watching the movie Inside Out. And Inside Out 2 is such an amazing movie.
They're so good.
And
I didn't want to watch it because I'm just like, I'm an old curmudgeon. I'm like, I'm not watching a cartoon. But they were so good.
It's very well written, really good characters, but it's like there's the character joy, and then there's embarrassment and shame. And it's like, and then in the second one they have anxiety, and it was like, oh, this is really, really clever and very true. So I had to definitely learn, and still am learning.
So cool. All right. What is something that you used to care way too much about that now you couldn't care less about?
I think in general, and I'll give a few examples too, maybe, is putting the perception of others as my North Star versus how do I actually feel, right? And to me, it's like, a lot of things that we've talked about. I guess the other thing that comes to mind too is like, where have I changed my own behaviors maybe? And like a small thing of I started shaving my armpits, and because I learned that like and at first it was like, oh no, that's not what guys do. And what would people think if I'm at the gym or something? But then it's like, wait a minute. They're like, it's actually, I don't think I really smell that like much, but like you sweat way less when you have less hair there. And so I just, as an experiment, I shaved one and I left the other, and I would just kind of like go about my day and kind of like smell and observe. And I was like, oh, actually, I'm sweating way less in the shaved one. So now I just shave both.
Wow. That's cool.
That's like a small little thing, which is under the bucket of, what will people think about this versus what do I think about this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So caring less about other people's opinions on
which I think really a better way to state that is caring more about my own opinion.
That's a much better way to state that. Yeah. Caring more about what you care about.
Yeah. And figuring out, okay, what do I care about? And then therefore, what do I not care about?
Yeah.
And like just like having this idea of radical transparency and radical honesty, where of course, like it'd be, I'm not here saying like, oh, now I don't care what anybody thinks. It's like part of the human condition to care what people think. But I'm not going to try to change either who I am or appear in a different way, or like really go against my well-being and try to show up in a different way. Of like, to me, part of this like really fun day today of like, I noticed the inclination was like, oh, I should prep for today. And then it was kind of fun to be like, I also don't need to prep anything because we're just having a cool conversation. Right. And so, it comes up a lot. So, okay, how do I actually feel about this? And that's like a small gift that I've given to myself, because what I thought was optimizing for like, oh, I got to optimize for all these other people is really the hard way to do it versus like, what do I actually want and what do I actually care about?
I love it, man. Mitchell, thank you so much for coming out here and having this conversation with me. It really means a lot to take some time out of your busy schedule and come sit down and do this. And I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope that you got something out of it, and I hope whoever listens to this does as well.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. This is awesome, dude.
Yeah. So MitchellLandon.com is where people can find your blog. And then you have the Mitchell Cohen podcast.
Yep.
And is there anything else?
That everything should be linked everywhere. Mitchell Landon on like Twitter and Instagram. But those are all the things. The newsletter is called Making Connections, but that's all linked there too. Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, I really appreciate it. For those of you at home, thanks for listening to Who Cares. We're really glad that you're here. I'm really glad that you're here. So am I.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, if this episode resonated with you at all, or you know somebody that might need to hear it, go ahead and send it their way. If you like, follow, subscribe wherever you're listening. Leave a second, or if you have a second, leave a review. It really helps us. You can find us on all socials at Who the Pod Cares, or you can go to whothepodcares.com. We're building this thing together, so thank you very much for being a part of it, and we'll see you next time.